Hello everybody and welcome to Learn with Saad. In this video, I'm going to teach you about squares, cubes and root parts. If you have a number or a letter which you need to times it by itself, like you can see in this one, by itself, multiple times or repeatedly, then you can use the power notation or index notation to express it. In order to show it, what we do, first we write the A as the large number or a letter, and then we see how many times we times A with itself. A with itself. So we timings A 1, 2, 3, 4 times by itself. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna write 4 on the top. Now let's come on to the next example. This example, please. So we're gonna follow the same pattern or method. So first what we're gonna do, we're gonna write 2 as a large number, and then we're gonna see how many times we times 2 with itself. 1, 2, 3 times. So we're gonna write 3 on the top as its power. Let me do the third one, then I'll tell you what we will call the large number or the large part and the small one. For the third one, again, we're going to use the same method. So 4, we will write 4 first and see how many times we are timing 4 with itself. 1, 2, 3. So we can write 3 on the top. So in the power notation or the index notation, so the large number, this large number, we call it base, and the small number on the top, this number, the large number, we call it base, and the small number on the top in power notation, which is sometimes called exponent, power or index. Basically this number tells you how many times to use the number in multiplication. So it's basically the 4 times we got to use A in multiplication. So the top part is called exponent, or power or index. So in this one, according to index notation or power notation, this is our base part and the top parts, which is exponent, power or index. So most cases we use the term power, 2 to the power 3, and we read it as 2 to the power 3, a to the power 4, or 4 to the power 3. So that top part, the small number, which is a power, tells us how many times you need to times the base number by itself. You can multiply any number by itself as many times you want using this notation. So there is no limit on it that it can be 3, 4, but you can times it as many times as you like. But what you need to do is the top part, you need to write on the top of the base number the number of times you times a number or a letter by itself. Now I'm going to show you some other examples as well to just explain it one last time, so then you guys will be expert on representing the numbers, power notation or index notation. Let's say if you can use 2 times 2 times A times A times A. So we can represent both numbers, the numbers part and the alphabet part. The numbers and alphabets or letters using this power notation. So for the numbers part, we can write it as 2 as a base, and how many times we are timing 2 with itself? 1 and 2. So that's what 1 and 2. So we need to write 2 on the top, and then for the next one, first what we would do, we would write down its base of first A, and the number of times we are timing A with itself. 1, 2, 3. So you can write 3 on the top. So 2A3 will be the representation of 2 times 2 times A times A times A in power notation form. The reason I'm explaining this topic in more detail is because this topic is basically the foundation or base of learning the algebra part. I know in school and the teachers don't spend much time on this topic and don't explain it in that much detail. That's why most of the students struggle with maths. So if you understand this whole part, which you have done it, I hope so, then you will find the next topics a lot easier. So here we are. So we have some more questions on the index notation. So what does it says? Write the following using index notation. So the first thing we need to do is what we're gonna do is we're gonna write 3 here first, and then the number of times we multiply 3 by itself. We can count it 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can write it as 3 to the power 4. You don't need to write it, but I'm just writing it on the top of it just right now so that you guys understand it properly. So let's do the second one. First thing we would do is basically we would write S first, which is base, and we'll see how many times we are timing S with itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. S to the power 5. Next one is 10. Same. The rule is same for numbers and letters as well. So we're gonna write down 10 first, and then we're gonna see how many times we're timing tens. 1, 2, 3. It's gonna be 10 to the power 3. Question number 4, same. Now we have 2 letters, A and F, so we will solve them separately because we can't mix them together. It's against the rules of maths. So we write A first, base first, and then we count how many times. The timings A 3 times with itself, so A times A times A is A to the power 3. Then gonna write F, so 1, 2, 3, 4 to the power 4. Easy peasy. I'm going to do the next one as well for you guys, please. So J times J, pretty simple, J square, and 5 times 5 is 5 square. Now, like this, we mentioned it on the previous page, we can times it any numbers. There is no restriction on the number of times you can time or number of alphabets or numbers you can use it. So in this question number 6, we go B, A, and C, 3 letters. So we would do them one by one. Let's start with, you can start with any letter first. So let's start with B first. So B, how many B's we have? 2. 1, 2, B square. And write the next one, A. So A, we got 1, 2, A square. The third one is C. 1, 2, 3, C cube. So that's all for index notation. And now I've solved all the 6 questions for you. What I want you guys is to please do these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 questions. Please do it yourself. So if you get stuck with anything or any concept, you can go back to my video and watch it again. But I think the way I've explained everything in detail and in simple steps, you guys should be able to do it easily. All these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. Okay, now I'm going to cover on squares part. We have just done the power notation, and you will see how we would use power notation in squares. The square of any number, any positive number, is always positive. So if we got 2 square, 3 square, 6 square, 7 square, 8 square, 9 square. So when we times the number by itself twice, we call it, it's basically the square of it. And the square of any positive number is always positive. The answer we would get for all these numbers would be positive. Let's do these ones. 2 square means we need to times twice by itself. So 2 times 2 equals to 4. So the 4 is the answer of 2 square. So 3 square is, you need to times 3 by itself twice. 3 times 3 equals 6. Similarly, 6 square would be 6 times 6, 36. 7 square, it would be 7 times 7 equals to 49. 8 square would be 8 times 8, 64. And 9 square would be 9 times 9, 81. That's what we call it squaring. The whole thing, the squaring part thing is 2 square would be 2 times 2, 3 square would be 3 times 3, 6 square would be 6 times 6, 7 square would be 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 84. So what usually you would, tiny mistake here. So 3 times 3 is 9. I wrote 6. Had a long day. Usually what we do, I've showed you in the full explanation of how we get the full answers for us. But usually if they only expect us to write just the final part, the 81, 64, 49, that for the answers for the squares of 2s, 3s, or any number. So let's now move on to the next one. The square of any negative number is also positive. So far we've been dealing with the positive numbers so far, where all the numbers were, the digits were positive. Now if we have to times, or basically find the squares of a negative numbers, it's going to be the same, but the only different thing gonna be is the working out. I'll show you the working out for these negative number squares. So minus 2 square, the method is same. Minus 2, we're gonna times minus 2 2 times. That gives us 4. The reason minus 2 times minus 2 gives us positive number, because minus times minus is positive. So whenever we times minus with a minus, it gives us a positive number. It gives us positive. It can be for letters as well or numbers. Minus 4 square, similarly, we're gonna do it minus 4 times minus 4 gives us 16, because minus times minus, as mentioned in the rules, minus times minus is plus, so that's why this minus will disappear in the answer. Again, the next one, minus 6 squared would be minus 6 times minus 6 gives 36. Minus 7 squared would be minus 7 times minus 7 be 49 positive. So the guys, please always remember the reason of having a positive answer is because minus times minus is plus. You can have minus a times minus a, we would have a square, not minus a square or negative a square, because minus times minus, according to the rules of maths, will give us a positive answer. So let's do the next ones. I'm just gonna write down the answer for some of them directly, please. So minus 3 squared would be 9, minus 4 squared would be 16, minus 8 squared would be 64, and minus 9 squared would be 81. So this is basically what would be expected from you in any of your in-class test or exams. Whenever they ask you minus 3 squared, you are expected to write just the answer, not to show the working. But if you guys want to show the working, you can show the working. But basically up to year 6 and 7 you can, but year 7 onwards it's best you can write it down directly, the answer part. Again, to briefly summarize it, the square is basically of any alphabet or number. In what we do, we times it twice by itself, we get the answer, the square of a positive and negative numbers. The answer would always be positive. In short, the square of any number is positive. Here. So now there are some questions for you. Work out the exact value of minus 4 squared, minus 6 squared, minus 8 squared, 10 squared, 12 squared, minus 3 squared, 5 squared, and minus 7 squared. These 8 questions are for you guys to do as homework or practice. Please do it yourself. Okay, now we're going to cover cubes. We have done squares just recently, and now we're going to cover the cube part. Cube is a number multiplied by itself 3 times, whereas in the square we were multiplying a number by itself 2 times, whereas in the cubes we multiply it by 3 times. This can also be called a cube number. So in short, again, a number we're going to time it by itself 3. So the cube of 1 would be 1 times 1 times 1. So you can times 1 with itself a million times, but it will always give you the same one answer, one as an answer. 2 cube would be different now. 2 times 2 times 2. As the cube, we go to multiply 2 by itself 3 times. So what we're going to do for this one, how we do it, 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. It would be our answer. 3 cube, we're going to times 3 by itself 3 times. Oh, nice. Going to have 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 can give us 27. Let's do number 5. 5 cube. How can you do 5 cube? Same way. 5 times 5 times 5. And when you do it, we first do 5 times 5 is 25. And then times 25 with 5, it gives you 125. Miss the 4 here, so the 4 cube would be 4 times 4 times 4. The answer would be 4 times 4 is 16 times 4. Then we would times 16 with 4, which is 64. So 4 times 4, 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So whatever answer you get by timing the first two number, which is 16 in this case, so then you're going to times 16 with 4 to get 64. So same with all of them. So 2 times 2 is 4. The first two, the product of the first two would be 4. That answer, we would times it with the last one to gives us 8. Same for the 5 cube as well. The product basically means the multiplication of the first two number. The answer you get, which is 5 times 5 is 25. So please times 25 with 5 then. Let me do that for you. 25 on the side, then you times it with 5. And 5 times 5 is 25. 2 goes on the top. 5 times 2 is 10. Add 2. 12, 125. So then you write down 125 as the cube of 5 cube. Same goes with 6 and 10. Now I would like you guys to practice it yourself, please, for 6 and 10. The same way we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 and 10 you can. I tell you where most of the students I find them, they end up making mistakes, is what they do sometimes. If it's like 2 cube, so they, rather than timesing 2 by itself 3 times, what they end up doing is basically they do, if it's 2 cube, let me do it now, 2 cube next to it, what they do, they end up timings 2 with 3, and they write 6 as an answer, which is wrong. So please remember, cubes is basically timing a number by itself 3 times. Timing a number by itself 3 times. That's very important. Please remember, a cube is a number multiplied by itself. How many times? 3 times. 3 times. Please remember that. Just to get rid of all these little silly mistakes, I'm explaining everything in detail so you guys don't end up making all these mistakes. Otherwise, like other teachers or tutors or other anyone else, I can explain one example and say this is how you do it. The reason I'm spending too much time is because I want you guys to pick this topic once for all and good. Please make sure, another tip for learning squares, cubes, and I'm going to teach you root in a short while, is please always take good notes of everything which I've written down so far. You make sure everything is on your notebooks as well. And write down all the questions, not just the end questions which I've asked you to do, everything more or less in the same way, and take good notes of it, have different colors, and then you will have a clear understanding of what you have written down. Okay, now again, this section, do it yourself section, please. All the questions I've explained to you, you're gonna do it yourself now. -2 cube, 7 cube, and everything. All these 9 questions, please. Now, before you start doing questions, I need to tell you one more thing on the cubes as well. The cube of a positive number is always positive, and but the cube of a negative number is always negative. We have just done so many questions on the positive ones, so you can see the cube of all the positive numbers are positive answers, like 1 cube positive, 2 cube positive, 5 cube, 125 positive 1. However, for the negative ones numbers, like we have minus 3 cube, the answer would be always negative. Let's see how. So the first thing we got to do is we go to the main first principle of cubes is basically you got to times the number by itself. How many times? 3 times. 3 times. So then the product of the first two, minus 3 times minus 3, gives us 9. Minus 3 times minus 3 gives us 9. How? Because minus times minus gives us a positive number. Yeah, which we have, 9 in this case. But in the next one, it's going to be 9 times minus 3. 9 times minus 3 will give us minus 27, because minus plus times minus will give us minus, or minus times minus will also give us plus, or minus times plus will also give us minus as an answer. So the first one, minus times minus, we're using this rule, minus times minus gives us plus 9, and then we have 9, positive 9 times minus 3 is going to be minus 27. So the cube of a negative number is always negative, guys, please. Let me do one more example for you, so then it will be a lot more clear. So let's say you go minus 5 cube. First thing you would do is write minus 5 times minus 5 times minus 5. The rule of the cube is to basically time the numbers by itself 3 times. Then minus 5 times minus 5 is 25, because minus times minus, when you times a negative number with a negative number, you end up getting a positive number. And then when we times 25 positive with negative 5, we get negative 125. Here you go. So everything for squares and cubes are done. Please try to do these questions now, which has positives and negative cubes, and then after that you should not have any ambiguity or any problem or anything difficulty with doing squares and cubes ones. Okay, now I'm going to cover the last part for this section, video section, is the roots part. What is the root? Root is basically the inverse of raising a power. If you want to find the root of a number, the inverse or opposite of a number to its power is finding the root of a number. The square root is basically the symbol we use for the square roots. The symbol we use is this symbol. Square root is used for all the positive square roots. Negative square numbers don't have square roots. So the negative numbers don't have square roots. So let me explain you by showing some examples to you for square roots 1. So let's say you have the way we did the square root. Let's say 4 square we did was like this. 4 times 4 gives you 16. Yeah, so this is what we did as the square root. is the square of a number, not the square root. The square root is opposite of it. What happens in square root? What we do is square root, we write square root of 16 would be 4. And square root will take us back to the base of a square number. Yeah. So again, for another example, if you can do for 3 square is 3 times 3, it's 9. Then the square root of 9, the square root 9 would be 3. So the square root of 9 takes us back to the base of a square number. Yeah. This square root sign usually holds power as a half. So there's the power as a half. So I can show you other way as well. So if you have a 16 square root, you can write it as 16 to the power half. So we can solve it here as well. So 16, we can write 16 as 4 times 4 to the power half, which is 4 square power half. This 2 and 2 cancels each other and brings us back to the 4 1. So this method basically is an in-depth study of the thing which we have covered. I recommend this thing for GCSE students. For the other students, I'm gonna do few more examples. The square root amongst the square and cube is the most difficult one. Is the one where students usually get confused. I'm gonna do few more examples for you guys. Let's say we got to find the square root of 25. What would be the square root of 25? Would be 5. How? It's the reverse opposite of it. Because we know 5 times 5 is 25, which is also equal to 5 square. The square root of 25 would be 5 with the base of it. Yeah, that 5 opposite. So whatever you times, the number you times twice by itself, another way, like 25, 5 times 5 is 25, makes it 5 square. Then we can 5 square can be written like that, equals to 5. So that's how we find out the square root of 25. So it's basically the opposite of it. Let's say we go for the second question, 16, square root of 16. So we need to time 4 times 4 we know it gives us 16. So the 4 equals to 4 square. Basically one of it, or you can use it 4 as an answer. Square root of 16. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit more examples on another way as well. So let's say if you need to find the square root of, they ask you to find the square root of 16. So we now, one way is basically it is 4 square equals to 16. So now in a more direct way, so the square root of 16, next step, the square root of 16 would be 4. Yeah, that's 4. That's called finding square roots. of root 16. Another example, if they ask you to find the square root of 25, we know how we get 25. 5 square is 25, and then the square root of 25 would be just this part, 5, the opposite, reverse of it. If you go 9, the square root of 9 would be, we know 9 is 3 square, would be 3. That would be your answer. Root 9 would be equals to 3. So I've shown you a few examples. Now you guys need to do question number 1 and 2 by yourself. Find both square roots of 25, 64, 81, 121 and 169 without using a calculator, please. And then find square root of 36, square root of 100, 4 and 9, and the square root of question number 1 and 2. So what I do, I just do, this is a slightly difficult topic compared to the squares and cubes, I do only one example, one question part from both question number 1 and 2. Let's pick up this 81. 81, the square root, if we need to find the square root of 81, what we need to do is basically find two numbers. 9 times 9 is 81. We can write 9 square equals to 81. Now the square root of 81 would be just 9. Square root 81 is 9. This is how you find the square root of it. You can find the square root of all the remaining parts question like that as well, please. Yeah. So do please question number 1 and 2 with yourself. And then when you are done with it, then we would move to the next one after that. So we have done now the square roots of number 25, 64, 81, 121 and 169. I've shown you one example of 81. So what you do again, 81, we would see which numbers we need to not times it twice to get 81. In this case, 9 times 9 is 81. We can write it as 9 squared equals to 81. The square root of 81 would be just 9. Now the next topic is cube roots. Every number has exactly one cube root. In the cube roots has one cube root, whereas for the square roots one, so the square roots both have got positive and a negative square root. So it has basically plus 9 and minus 9. So for square roots, every positive number has two square roots, one positive and one negative one. The last question which we did was like 81, square root of 81. The square root of 81 would be 9. So if they ask you to find both, then you write this one, both positive and negative one, positive and negative. This is a positive one. You can write the negative one as like that. So one example is this. Second example for both positive and negative square root would be, let's say an easier one, root 4 equals to 2, and for the negative square minus 4, you can write it like minus 2. the calculator only shows us the positive square root. When you use the positive square root one, the calculator only shows us that part. In a similar way, now we're gonna do the cube roots one. In the cube roots, what happens? Every number has exactly one cube root. The symbol we use for the cube root one is like that, square root kinda, and then we have a 3 here. That is used for cube roots part. For 2 to the 2 cube, we now, the 2 cube is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8, is cube. In order to find the cube root of 8, it would be like reverse of it. 8 cube 3. The answer would be exactly like the last one. The base, this part 2, would be 2. The cube root for the next question as well, it is 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So the cube root of 27 would be 3. As this is a reverse or opposite operation, so we're going to write that 3. So 4 times 4 times 4 gives you 64. The cube root of 64 would be, space in this case is 4. Last one, 5 times 5 times 5. This gives us 125. So cube root would be 125 would be 5. Is 5. So now you guys can see why I was spending too much time in explaining square roots, cube roots, and everything in the previous topics one, because we still got to use all these things in order to find the square roots and cube roots one. And I hope you understand all of it, and now we will head towards doing some questions. So here are the questions I have for students of year 6, 7, 8 and 9. The students of year 6, 7 and 8 and 9 should be able to do all these questions. This part, however, the last part, this section, number 1, the second one, this one, I've covered it in full detail. That part, I'll only do one part because I've covered square roots, but it's a slightly different question. But still on the square root, this is on the square. They're saying given y square, write down the 2 possible values of y. Like I told you in before, that the square root has 2 possible values, 2 values. So in this one, so see, I just pick up, let's say if I take y, this question, y square equals to 4. In order to find the value of y, this y they want, but we have y square equals to 4. So what we would do, we would square root both sides. In order to get rid of this square, we would do square root on both sides. Whenever you square root a squared number, what it does is basically it cancels it. Then you have y equals to 2, because we know the square root of 4 is 2, is basically plus minus 2. That's the value of the 2 values of y would be y equals to plus 2 and y equals to minus 2. So these are the 2 possible values of y of 2 and minus 2. So guys, all the remaining questions you can do it exactly like that for this part, number 3. Yep. Same for the cube one. They can ask you given y cube, they have given the y cube. Now we have a cube root. So in the previous question, in this one, we had the squared number. We had to find the square root in order to get the two values of y. So in the next one, we have got the cube root. Given y cube, write down the value of y. So in that case, what I'm gonna do one more question for you as well, please. So y cube equals to 27. What we're gonna do in order to get rid of the cube, this part, we have question y cube equals to 27. We're gonna cube root both sides. So we did questions on the previous page on the cube root. So what it would do, it would cancel cube with this part. So we'll only have y here. Cube root of 27 is 3. As we covered in our cube root section, cube root gonna have only one value. So exactly like that, you can do all the remaining parts, please. And if you guys get stuck with any of the part from any question, you guys can mention it in the comment section, and then what I will do, I will explain everything in detail for that particular part for you guys. So please do all the questions, these ones, and all the parts, all of these questions as your homework after watching the video. If you get stuck with any of the part for any of the question, please go back, watch my video again, and I'm positive you will understand everything. Or if there is any ambiguity, anything unclear, you can mention it in the comment section, and I'll try to address to that thing. Okay, in this section, I've got exam style questions for year 10 and year 11 students. They should be able to do all these questions. That's for IGCSE board. So please try to do question number 2. You guys can use the calculator to do it. And the question number 1 in this one you can do. The question number 1, you need to do this part with. So please attempt all these exam style questions for year 10 and year 11 students. I hope you guys liked the video, enjoyed the video, and liked that learning process. I tried my best. And if you would like me to cover any topics which you want in detail, I'm going to cover all the topics in a chronological order. So starting from the algebra, then I'm going to cover all the graphs, vectors, every section. There were 7 sections in GCSEs. Also all the parts of year 5, 11 plus every section. So please subscribe my channel if you would like to get access to all my videos in one go, and I'm positive that my videos will help you guys a lot to reach your full potential. I have a vast experience. You will see all that experience reflecting in my work. Wish you guys best of luck with all your tests and all your future exams. Thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much.